He's as polarizing as he is entertaining. Vince McMahon is part renegade, part mogul, and all showman.
Over decades, McMahon turned the WWE into a billion-dollar juggernaut.
Another corporate leader mired in a sex scandal.
We're not talking about garden variety misconduct. We're talking about some real awful things.
A lot of Vince McMahon, his ability to get away with stuff was because he was also this character.
Where does the line between Vince McMahon and Mr. McMahon end?
Vince McMahon is a larger-than-life figure, often more recognized than some of the wrestling stars he has helped to develop. He has been referred to as the P.T. Barnum of wrestling, transforming WWE into a global billion-dollar empire. On screen, he portrays the role of the billionaire villainous boss. Do I even know Vince McMahon? I doubt anyone really does.
Mr. McMahon!
Many recognize his name, yet few grasp the true essence of who he is. The persona he presents is that of a larger-than-life promoter, much of which is a crafted character. He reveals only what he wants the public to see. Very few individuals hold such power in the world, and Vince McMahon is one of them. He has created something truly unique, immensely powerful, and deeply embedded in the fabric of multiple generations. He accomplished feats that many deemed impossible, doing so with relentless determination. Vince McMahon delivers exactly what you expect. He is precisely as he presents himself.
Breaking news that was just brought to me. Vince McMahon, the legendary CEO and chairman of Worldwide Wrestling Entertainment, is stepping aside.
The Wall Street Journal reports that WWE is investigating a secret $3 million settlement that Vince McMahon agreed to pay a now former employee, who McMahon is accused of having a consensual affair with.
This investigation began with an anonymous tip sent to WWE's board, alleging that McMahon had taken advantage of an employee and attempted to cover it up. Additionally, sources indicate that this may only be the beginning, suggesting that there are deeper issues at play. To understand professional wrestling is to recognize its ability to turn fantasy into reality. I recall hearing people question why anyone would watch fake wrestling, dismissing it as mere entertainment without substance.
People that weren't fans would say, it's all fans that are too stupid to realize that it's not real. No, it's all people that are smart enough to accept the fact that it's a show and buy into characters and the storylines and engage in it in that manner.
Professional wrestling thrives on vivid storytelling with clear heroes, villains, and archetypes like the damsel in distress. It offers fans an emotional connection, allowing them to experience every moment deeply. This spectacle embodies the grandeur that represents America. Wrestling is larger than life. It tells great stories and serves as a significant form of entertainment within American culture. Despite its importance, professional wrestling often goes unrecognized in discussions about cultural relevance. Vince McMahon's influence and impact are frequently overlooked, yet they shape the world around us in profound ways. Vince McMahon's entry into the business world was largely influenced by his father, who was regarded as one of the top promoters in the industry. During his childhood, Vince was unaware that his last name was McMahon until he met his father at the age of 12. Prior to that, he resided in a trailer park with his mother and an abusive stepfather, enduring daily physical abuse. Throughout this period of abuse, Vince received no communication from his father. When they finally met, he eagerly approached him, expecting a warm embrace, but instead received a different reaction. It is undeniable that Vince McMahon rose from nothing in the beginnings. However, once his father entered his life, Vince's dreams transformed from mere fantasies into tangible goals. Upon discovering the world of professional wrestling, Vince realized he wanted to become involved in his father's enterprise. One day, while accompanying his father on a television program, an announcer repeatedly demanded higher pay. As the show was about to start, he declared that he would walk out if his demands weren't met. Observing his father's dilemma, Vince asked him what his plan was. His father suggested that Vince step in and announce for him, marking the beginning of Vince's career. Thus, Vince began to establish himself as an announcer. Although he wasn't particularly skilled at commentary, he possessed a unique ability to convey emotion and tell compelling stories.
Zbyszko is facing a legend.
The wrestling industry parallels theater, film, and literature in many ways. A crucial aspect of this is the creation of engaging characters, including both heroes and villains. Eventually, Vince's father decided it was time to exit the business and sought a buyer, not considering Vince as a potential successor at that moment. When Vince expressed interest in purchasing his father's company, they struck a deal. He assumed control of the business but financed it through funds that would have been generated had they continued operating together. This arrangement felt like robbing Peter to pay Paul. However, when Vince made the final payment, it astonished everyone, including his father. It seemed as though Vince Sr. intentionally made things challenging for his son, wanting him to understand the value of hard work and struggle. Upon taking charge of the company, Vince McMahon envisioned elevating the product to mainstream status, moving away from its perception as a lower-class entertainment form. He aspired for something greater than just professional wrestling. He aimed for growth that would allow competition against various promoters nationwide. At that time, the wrestling industry functioned regionally under what was known as the territory system. In the past, various wrestling promotions operated throughout the country, each hosting live television shows within their designated territories. There were unwritten boundaries that promoters respected, forming a traditional system based on mutual agreements that were rarely violated. However, once Vince McMahon secured his deal, he had a clear vision. He intended to invade these established territories.
Of the Great World Wrestling Federation cities, St. Louis, Missouri, and indeed...
Vince began promoting his events in areas that were conventionally controlled by other promoters, which understandably upset many in the industry.
Whether it's in St. Louis, Los Angeles, Hoboken, New Jersey, or wherever, no doubt the World Wrestling Federation will be there.
As Vince's actions gained traction, other promoters started to issue threats to his father regarding Vince's aggressive tactics. Yet, Vince remained unfazed. He believed those promoters had little ownership in the wrestling landscape, and he was ready to compete with them head-on. After successfully expanding into new markets, Vince began to dismantle the existing territorial structure. Many top wrestlers from rival promotions chose to leave their companies and join Vince's growing empire. During this period, Vince was raking in substantial profits, which attracted even more talent. Most of the wrestlers who came to work for him had built their careers elsewhere, often thanks to the hard work of other promoters. With just one phone call, they would leave their previous affiliations behind, leaving those promoters in the dust. It was a ruthless environment where only the strongest survived, and Vince was determined not to take a backseat to anyone. He was focused on building his brand, and competition was simply part of the game in America. At that point, having successfully outmaneuvered his rivals, Vince felt empowered to operate on his own terms. While his father had favored Bob Backlund as the face of the company, Vince sought someone who exuded excitement and charisma, someone larger than life who could captivate audiences. The first encounter between Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan occurred years before Vince acquired his father's business, when Hogan was known as Sterling Golden.
Sterling Golden.
Vince Sr. looked at him and declared, "That's not your name," leading to the iconic rebranding as Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan.
When they brought Hulk Hogan on board, they were in need of someone who could convincingly challenge their top star, Andre the Giant. Vince approached Hogan with a proposal to take him on the road across various territories, and Hogan immediately agreed without hesitation.
Let's go, brother.
Hogan recognized the direction in which the business was headed and understood that Vince was the key to that future. It was a straightforward choice for him. One promoter had the potential to elevate him to national stardom, while another aimed to keep things at a smaller regional level. At one point, Vince needed to transition the championship title from Bob Backlund to Hulk Hogan. However, he faced a challenge because both competitors were regarded as co-babyfaces. To navigate this, he enlisted the help of the Iron Sheik. The Iron Sheik, hailing from Iran, was one of the most despised figures in wrestling during his time as a heel. Wrestling often reflects societal dynamics. It serves as a mirror to America itself. Vince has a keen eye for trends and understands what resonates with audiences. Hulk Hogan needed a formidable opponent at that moment, and the timing was perfect for this narrative of American valor versus foreign villainy.
Hulk Hogan needed the ultimate opponent, and the timing was impeccable. It's the all-American hero versus this evil Iranian.
When Hulk Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik, it elicited an enormous reaction from Madison Square Garden, solidifying Hogan's legacy as a wrestling icon that endures to this day. Putting the championship on the Iron Sheik was a strategic move, setting the stage for Hulk Hogan to take over as the face of the company. This decision was crucial for Vince, who needed a strong figure to lead the expansion of the business, and it proved to be a successful creative execution.
Many fans feel that Hulk Hogan is perhaps the most exciting pro wrestling champion ever.
The significance of Hulk Hogan cannot be overstated. Without him, I believe Vince's efforts to grow the business would have faltered. Pro wrestling is fundamentally a star-driven industry, and creating stars is what generates popularity. Vince excelled at this in ways that many other promoters could not, largely due to the influence of his father. Vince McMahon Sr. had a talent for presenting top wrestlers as larger-than-life figures, which was often more important than the quality of the matches themselves. This was a strength that Vince inherited. There came a moment when Vince's father expressed his pride in him, telling Vince that many of the promoters he had collaborated with over the years weren't true friends. He encouraged Vince to disregard them, saying he was surpassing them all, which made him proud.
And I thought, wow, it's the first time my dad ever said anything like that he was on my side.
Vince McMahon Sr. died at the age of 69. Vince regarded this as one of the most significant moments of his life.
In a moment of silence for Mr.
Before he died, it was the only time that he told me that he loved me. But wow.
Vince McMahon Sr. chose to wait until Vince McMahon Jr. achieved success before finally telling him he loved him. That moment became one of Vince's most cherished memories. However, there was a complexity in their relationship. It seemed that Vince may not have fully liked his father. When Vince took over, he envisioned a transformation in wrestling that defied traditional norms, and his innovative ideas often frustrated his father. As Vince became the head of the company, their clashes primarily stemmed from Vince Sr.'s reluctance to embrace the evolving landscape of the industry. Vince introduced bold concepts that many considered too radical at the time. He focused on programming aimed at a younger audience, while others were still fixated on regional territories. He recognized that national cable was the future, and it was evident he aimed for broader distribution through platforms like USA Network. USA Network became a pivotal marketing outlet for WWF. Vince always sought to innovate and promote new ideas, viewing wrestling not merely as a sport but as part of the entertainment industry. He constantly explored ways to connect with various entertainment sectors and sought co-branding opportunities that would enhance both brands. During this period of growth, Vince was dedicated to his work, but his wife, Linda McMahon, felt they needed a break. They took a brief honeymoon, but upon their return, Vince announced plans for an annual major event akin to the Super Bowl, which he dubbed WrestleMania. Linda remarked that Vince wasn't truly enjoying their vacation. His mind was preoccupied with business.
March 31st, it's WrestleMania.
The concept of WrestleMania made perfect sense given the popularity of events like the Super Bowl and other major sports competitions, so why not create a grand finale for wrestling?
WrestleMania.
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 WrestleMania represented a significant gamble for Vince. He invested heavily in ensuring its success. If it had flopped, he risked financial ruin. At that time, he didn't have substantial funds to back it up, and a major failure could have jeopardized the entire company. Hulk Hogan understood that if they didn't succeed, it could mean the end of the business. WrestleMania was monumental, and everything fell into place that night, leading to its success. Vince wanted to make a statement about what wrestling could be. It was about becoming a form of entertainment that encompassed various aspects of show business. They brought together extraordinary talents from different entertainment sectors, creating a blend known as sports entertainment. If there was ever a perfect storm for this concept, it was then. Vince was thrilled because they truly pulled it off. The success of WrestleMania 1 exceeded Vince's wildest expectations for the company. WrestleMania 2 also performed well and turned a profit, so it wasn't a complete disaster. However, despite its commercial success, it didn't quite match the spectacle of the first WrestleMania. This led to WrestleMania 3, where Vince faced the challenge of filling a massive stadium in Pontiac, Michigan, which could hold around 93,000 fans. He knew he needed a bigger attraction, so he brought in Andre the Giant. Hogan versus Andre was a matchup they had seen before, but to sell tickets, they marketed it as if this was their first encounter. Vince had to persuade Andre to return to the ring, especially since Andre was dealing with health issues and needed significant back surgery. While Andre was filming in the UK, Vince made a point to visit him and convince him to undergo the necessary operation to come back and draw an unprecedented crowd. Initially, Andre thought Vince was joking, but Vince assured him he was serious about the match being Hogan versus Andre, with Andre taking on the role of the heel for the first time in his career. This match became a massive promotional event. WrestleMania 3 sold out with 93,000 attendees. Hogan believed this would be the defining moment of his career. It was a clash between Andre the Giant and someone with immense charisma, almost like a superhero. The collision of these two was incredible.
Welcome to WrestleMania 3!
During the match, it became evident how severe Andre's back issues were. When he went down to the ropes and got back up, he instructed Hulk to slam him, and Hulk did just that. In an interview later, Hulk mentioned that after delivering his leg drop, he was unsure whether he would win or lose until Andre didn't kick out. WrestleMania 3 became their biggest attraction ever. WrestleMania 3 became their biggest attraction ever. WrestleMania 3 played a crucial role in WWE's history and in Vince McMahon's vision for wrestling.
Greatest attraction we've ever had.
It symbolized Andre the Giant passing the torch to Hulk Hogan. At that time, Hogan was positioned as the ultimate entertainer and athlete, representing the wrestling brand effectively. WrestleMania 3 transformed the industry and propelled Hulk Hogan into superstardom. During the height of Hulkamania, Hulk Hogan was arguably the most beloved figure worldwide. Whenever Hogan was featured on a card, it was guaranteed to sell out. He had become a national icon. You didn't even need to be a regular wrestling fan to recognize Hulk Hogan. He had truly transcended the sport.
He is the most famous and successful professional wrestler the world has ever seen.
Hogan and Vince McMahon operated almost as one entity. Whenever Vince had an idea, Hogan executed it. Despite any doubts Hogan may have had about Vince's suggestions, he went along with them because they consistently turned into successes. The first 3 WrestleManias were monumental achievements, but with great success came significant challenges, and Vince found himself under scrutiny.
Special investigation has turned up allegations that could outrage the biggest wrestling fan.
A legal fight is in store for the head of the World Wrestling Federation.
It's a scandal that threatens to knock him right out of the ring.
In the wake of this incredible success, Vince became embroiled in serious scandals that threatened to unravel everything he had built. One notable incident involved Jimmy Snuka and the tragic death of his girlfriend in a Pennsylvania hotel room. In 1983, Snuka was one of the company's biggest stars. His girlfriend suffered a fatal head injury, and while investigations suggested homicide, no charges were ever brought against him. All right. There were whispers that Vince might have played a role in keeping this matter quiet. At that time, most fans were unaware of the darker side of professional wrestling, but journalist Phil Mushnick was among the first to bring these issues to light. He was particularly critical of Vince, once telling me that if he published a certain story, it could lead to the company's downfall the very next day. There was a lot happening behind the scenes during that era. Young talent often found themselves exploited by higher-ups who demanded sexual favors in exchange for job opportunities. All right. Key figures like Terry Garvin and Pat Patterson were among those in positions of power within McMahon's organization. In an industry with prevalent homophobia, Pat was openly gay yet managed to thrive and secure a top position wherever he worked. Many employees hesitated to voice their concerns for fear of losing their jobs. In interviews, when asked why they didn't report issues to Vince McMahon, they expressed that they feared being fired since he was second in command. They believed Vince would protect Patterson over them due to Patterson's value to the company. When asked if Vince shielded Pat from scrutiny, they responded that he prioritized protecting the business instead. Pat was crucial in professional wrestling and served as Vince's right-hand man in terms of booking, making him an invaluable asset to the organization. This period in Vince's life felt like everything was collapsing around him. He experienced frustration over what he could actually control. There was a female referee named Rita Marie who accused Vince of sexual assault. At that time, she was well known as the only woman officiating in professional wrestling, and Vince was attempting to promote her as a popular character, emphasizing her appeal as a hot female referee. Vince faced a lawsuit over the allegations, yet the general public largely ignored it. Many viewed her as just another woman fabricating stories about a wealthy man, leading to a negative perception of her. The situation didn't resonate with the public as it should have. Vince was a significant figure in cable television, and people were reluctant to investigate further. They didn't want to confront the reality of the situation. Most newspapers chose to shy away from the story, considering wrestling beneath them. However, Phil Mushnick remained undeterred by Vince's influence and continued to pursue the issue. I believe the negative media attention ultimately contributed to the indictment and subsequent trial. Just before the trial began, Vince underwent neck surgery, appearing in court with a neck brace. My impression was that this operation wasn't urgent at that moment, and many speculated he wore it to garner sympathy from the judges. It's hard not to view this as part of some orchestrated narrative. After all, in professional wrestling, villains often don neck braces for dramatic effect, knowing they'll be booed by the crowd. With Vince, everything seemed like a performance, even amid such serious legal proceedings where so much was at stake. During this tumultuous time, Hulk Hogan began receiving boos from fans instead of cheers. He felt a loss of control over his own image and eventually told Vince that he needed to step back and take a break. It was a difficult conversation for both of them. Many people may not fully grasp how critical the situation was at that time. A series of scandals converged, creating an ideal opportunity for competitors to make their move. Eric Bischoff was keenly aware that Hulk Hogan had departed from WWE and was exploring opportunities in television and film. Coincidentally, while Bischoff was at Disney MGM Studios filming his WCW show, Hogan was also there working on a project titled Thunder in Paradise. Seizing the moment, Bischoff approached Hogan and expressed a strong desire for him to consider returning to wrestling, even if it was on a part-time basis. Hogan, however, was not enjoying the acting life and found being stuck in a trailer most of the day unappealing. His true passion had always been wrestling. Meanwhile, Ted Turner was offering lucrative contracts, guaranteeing Hogan $1 million a year with the flexibility to choose his workdays. When Hogan inquired about how many days he would need to work, Turner replied, "How many do you want?" This contrasted sharply with WWE's grueling schedule of 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Bischoff recognized this as an incredible opportunity and put on his salesman hat to persuade Hogan to join WCW. When Hogan left WWE, he had an emotional meeting with Vince McMahon. He assured Vince that he would never compete against him, which was a significant concern at the time. Vince and Hogan shared a close personal relationship. Vince had played a crucial role in making Hogan a superstar. Therefore, Hogan's shift to WCW during Vince's legal troubles felt like a profound betrayal. Even today, it remains a sensitive topic for many. Vince regarded Hogan as a lifelong ally, but Hogan was enticed by Ted Turner's offer of guaranteed money. As the trial unfolded, the stakes were incredibly high for Vince McMahon. He faced serious charges regarding the alleged distribution of anabolic steroids to his wrestlers. The case was expected to last several days, with particular attention focused on Hulk Hogan, who was anticipated to be the government's key witness against McMahon. After leaving WWF, Hogan was approached by authorities who hoped he would testify against Vince. They warned him that if he didn't comply, he could potentially face significant legal consequences himself. The investigation was heavily focused on Vince McMahon, and there were serious concerns that he could face a lengthy prison sentence of up to 17 years. Hulk Hogan found himself in a tough spot. He was reluctant to testify against Vince, but the pressure was overwhelming. Authorities had leverage over Hogan, and their primary target was Vince. Given the high conviction rates in such cases, it felt like the odds were stacked against McMahon. You could sense Vince's fear as he grappled with significant legal troubles. In situations where someone is perceived as vulnerable, it's common for others to take advantage of that weakness. The pressure on Vince came from all sides, making it incredibly difficult for him to maintain his ground. When Hogan was granted immunity, it was time for him to take the stand. As he walked into the courtroom, he passed by Vince, and their relationship was strained. The federal authorities believed this was the perfect opportunity for Hogan to turn against Vince and potentially reshape the wrestling industry. However, during his testimony, Hogan surprised everyone. On cross-examination, the defense landed a solid point. Mr. McMahon never ordered or directed you to take steroids, never. It was your personal choice. Hogan affirmed that there was no implication from Vince encouraging steroid use. One of the last things Hogan had told Vince before the trial was, "We rise together, we fall together. Don't forget that." The prosecutors were visibly taken aback by Hogan's testimony. It was clear they were not expecting such support for Vince. In a Netflix interview, when asked if the government knew what he would say, Hogan replied, "No, I wouldn't tell them. I just said I'll say whatever you guys need me to say." He intended to tell the truth. Vince didn't sell steroids or pressure anyone to take them. The authorities even called upon Tony Atlas in hopes of finding someone who would testify against Vince. When asked if Vince encouraged him to use steroids, Atlas responded that he had been using them prior to meeting Vince. There was an understanding among wrestlers about performance-enhancing substances, but there was no direct instruction from Vince to take them. Despite the pressures and accusations, Vince maintained his innocence. The reality was that he was being targeted without just cause, and naturally he was deeply concerned about the implications of the trial. At that time, Ted Turner, owner of WCW and Vince's biggest rival, was also in play. Turner was a pioneer in cable television and had been instrumental in broadcasting professional wrestling nationwide. Regardless of how the trial concluded, its impact on WWE was significant. Business began to tighten and fear permeated the organization. Some executives left during this tumultuous period, further complicating matters for WWE. Financially, they struggled. There were years of losses, and revenues plummeted as they found themselves in a precarious situation. Vince was on the lookout for a new figure to take over as the face of WWE, someone to succeed Hulk Hogan. Enter Bret Hart, often seen as the one who could rise to the occasion.
Go get him, champ.
Of the new generation era, introducing fresh talent like Bret Hart, Razor Ramon, Kevin Nash, and Shawn Michaels. With Hogan's departure, it became clear that the landscape was shifting, raising questions about the future direction of the company. For many in the locker room, this change brought a renewed sense of optimism. It felt like an open playing field. With Hulk gone, the focus turned to who would emerge as the next leader. That was the prevailing mindset, and there were certainly plenty of contenders ready to step up. At that time, there was a significant gap that needed to be filled, particularly by the new generation of wrestlers like Bret Hart, who emerged as a key figure for this era. The company was facing numerous challenges, and Bret was seen as a reliable choice. Meanwhile, Ted Turner began to acquire talent, which added pressure for Vince. Turner was willing to invest heavily, telling his team to do whatever necessary to compete with WWE. Ted Turner began to acquire talent, which added pressure for Vince. Turner was willing to invest heavily, telling his team to do whatever necessary to compete with WWE. Financial incentives WCW offered were far superior to what many wrestlers had earned in WWE, making it an attractive option for them. When Eric Bischoff met with Ted Turner, he explained that competing with WWE was difficult since their flagship show, Monday Night Raw, aired in prime time while WCW was stuck on Saturday nights at 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Without hesitation, Ted instructed the head of TNT to grant Eric 2 hours of airtime every Monday night on TNT. This decision shocked many, and once Vince learned that WCW was gaining traction against WWE, he realized they were in serious trouble. The competition was heating up, and it posed a real threat to his business. As the landscape shifted, Eric introduced Nitro, marking a pivotal moment in wrestling history. Create genuine surprises, they planned an unforgettable first show. The audience was left stunned when Lex Luger made an unexpected appearance. Not only were fans shocked, but so were the WWE personnel, as many believed he was still under contract, right? However, he wasn't. Those close to Vince, like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, often remarked that Vince would never sell out. He was known for keeping his emotions hidden.
He never sold a thing. Selling is wearing your emotions on your face.
Yeah, Vince will never let you see him sweat.
Don't sell it. Never acknowledge the competition.
Meanwhile, Razor Ramon and Diesel were on the verge of leaving WWE. When asked to participate in certain storylines, they expressed their reluctance, stating simply that they just didn't want to do it. Vince had lengthy discussions with Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, and Kevin Nash, Diesel, who were hesitant about joining WCW. However, they had to consider their families and realize that financially, WCW offered better opportunities. At this time, Vince was not ready to adapt to the evolving landscape of wrestling, but WCW was. Eric Bischoff had long envisioned a storyline he called The Outsiders. He struggled to execute it until the right talent became available. With Scott Hall and Kevin Nash now on board, he finally had the perfect lineup. When they arrived in WCW, it marked a pivotal moment. Two outsiders coming in to disrupt everything. Wonder if they were there on behalf of WWE. The audience was left questioning whether what they were witnessing was genuine or part of a scripted storyline. This uncertainty created the perfect atmosphere. Scott Hall was being portrayed in a manner reminiscent of Razor Ramon. While they didn't explicitly name him as such, it was as close as one could get without directly referencing WWE. This infuriated Vince McMahon and led to a lawsuit against WCW for allegedly copying their style. It's interesting to note that Vince had previously done the same to Vern Gagne and the AWA, as well as other regional promotions. He actively recruited talent from those territories by offering them more lucrative contracts. This was the playbook Vince McMahon used back in 1984 and 1985. He took stars that others had built up and signed them for higher pay. While he had every right to do so, so did WCW, as it's all part of free enterprise. What truly shifted the momentum for WCW was the Bash at the Beach event, where the Outsiders were set to unveil their third member. The commentary team was buzzing with speculation about who this mysterious figure could be. As WCW began to gain the upper hand against Hall and Nash, Hulk Hogan made his entrance. Fans anticipated him coming to defend WCW's honor, but then came the shocking leg drop. This moment was monumental in sports entertainment history, as it felt incredibly real to see the industry's biggest hero turn against them. Those loyal fans, some with tears in their eyes, couldn't believe Hulk Hogan would embrace the villain role. It was a massive holy cow moment, one that could potentially derail a legendary career. When Hulk stepped out to play the antagonist, he understood that this could either be the pinnacle of his career or lead to significant backlash. Hulk Hogan's heel turn was a pivotal moment that could have drastically altered his career trajectory. During an interview, Vince McMahon was asked if WWE had ever considered turning Hogan into a villain, to which he firmly replied, no. He elaborated that both he and Hogan believed in keeping Hulk as a heroic figure, always standing up for what was right. This decision meant that Vince missed out on a potentially lucrative opportunity. For WCW, every piece of debris thrown into the ring during Hogan's heel turn felt like a treasure. The execution was impressive, as Hogan declared,
These two men right here came from a great big organization up north. I made that organization a monster. I made people rich up there.
Hulk was determined to push back against Vince, wanting to demonstrate that it wasn't just one individual responsible for the success of wrestling. It took a collective effort. He famously stated, "The man Hulk Hogan got bigger than the whole organization, brother." Vince has always maintained a business is business mentality, but there are instances where emotions come into play. With Hogan, it became personal. That was the moment everything shifted in the wrestling landscape. This led to the formation of the NWO storyline, which began with the Outsiders. The catchphrase,
You can call this the New World Order of Wrestling, brother,
marked a significant change in wrestling history. At the start of the Monday Night Wars, Vince didn't consider Eric Bischoff a serious threat. Instead, he viewed the conflict as primarily between himself and Ted Turner. In interviews, Vince frequently mentioned Ted Turner as the billionaire trying to take him down.
Ted trying to own the World Wrestling Federation.
Would Vince McMahon publicly acknowledge that Eric Bischoff, who had only recently entered the wrestling business, was outsmarting him week after week? He preferred to frame the narrative as a battle between Ted Turner, the media mogul, and himself, which painted him as the underdog hero in the eyes of fans. In another interview, when asked about his first impression of Eric Bischoff, Vince recalled that years prior, Bischoff had auditioned for a television announcer role at WWE, but didn't get hired. When asked if he regretted not bringing Bischoff on board back then, Vince simply replied, no. The interviewer pressed further.
You don't regret anything. I don't think I regret anything in my life.
Eric Bischoff did everything within his power, just as anyone in his position would. However, much of what he did was essentially built on concepts that originated from WWE. This included when Ted Turner acquired talent that WWE had developed. At that time, Vince McMahon was eager to retain one of my top stars. He made a significant move by flying to Calgary to meet with Bret Hart, presenting him with a lucrative 20-year contract. Eventually, Vince came to realize that trying to hold on to Bret was a poor business decision.
With the WWF forever.
While he felt compelled to keep Bret, he could have simply focused on creating new stars instead. Vince approached Bret and explained, "I can't maintain the salary I'm paying you now." In a surprising turn, Vince showed Bret the loopholes in his contract and suggested he leverage them to negotiate a better deal with WCW. Bret took this advice and pursued opportunities with WCW, landing a significant payday while still holding the WWF Championship. Vince expected Bret to do the honorable thing in business since he was leaving, lose the title to Shawn Michaels. However, Bret had other thoughts. There was a strong belief among many that Bret should drop the title before departing, but it wasn't losing the title, but rather losing to Shawn that troubled him. At that time, Shawn was quite difficult to deal with, and the animosity between Bret and Shawn was genuine. Both men felt that Vince and WWE were exploiting their real-life tensions for storyline purposes. While both Bret and Shawn were exceptional talents, their personal conflicts escalated. Shawn began delivering what are known as shoot promos, where he would go off script and make personal remarks. After a while, he learned exactly what would irritate Bret, and he pushed those buttons relentlessly. Tensions ran high, with Bret nearly confronting Shawn physically on multiple occasions, especially after Shawn made comments about Bret's family life. The culmination of their rivalry led to a pivotal match in Montreal. Vince approached Bret and requested that he do the right thing for Shawn that night, explaining that they needed someone to step into Bret's shoes. Bret was resistant, especially considering it was in Canada. A call took place involving Shawn, Triple H, and Vince, during which Vince expressed that Bret was unwilling to comply. It was Triple H who suggested that if Bret wouldn't do it, they should take matters into their own hands. On that night, Vince was determined that Bret Hart would not leave the arena as champion, and he orchestrated events to ensure that outcome. On the day of the match, it was communicated that there would be a schmoz finish, a chaotic brawl involving multiple participants where no clear winner would emerge. All right, this approach was seen as a way to satisfy everyone involved. However, WWE had a history of not being straightforward with wrestlers, and Bret was aware of past incidents like what happened with Wendy Richter. He remained wary and kept his focus on Shawn. When Shawn applied the sharpshooter, a move famously associated with Bret, Bret noticed the timekeeper and saw Vince signaling him to ring the bell. Even though Bret hadn't submitted, the timekeeper hesitated in shock, but Vince snapped at him to ring the bell. The bell rang, and even Bruce Pritchard was yelling into the headset, questioning why the bell was rung. At that moment, Bret Hart could feel the weight of betrayal. It was all becoming clear to him. They had truly done him wrong. Vince wanted to be present at ringside so that Bret would understand what had transpired and that he was reclaiming what he believed was rightfully his. Bret was not pleased with this decision. Outside the ring, chaos erupted. Bret raised his arms, signaling WCW, a move that's hard for many to comprehend, just how furious one can feel when betrayed on live television. In many respects, it made him look foolish. When Vince double-crossed Bret that fateful day in Montreal, he inadvertently changed the landscape of professional wrestling. Bret was filled with rage as he walked back to the locker room. He felt like he could have killed him. Literally, Bret immediately confronted Shawn Michaels, asking if he had any prior knowledge of the plan. Shawn insisted he didn't know anything. Vince had made it clear to Shawn and Triple H that they needed to swear they were unaware of his intentions. He told them to lie if anyone asked. This was strictly a decision made by Vince McMahon. Vince felt a strange sense of obligation to Bret due to their past relationship, believing he had wronged him. He told Shawn and Triple H that Bret would likely want to confront him physically, and he felt he deserved it. Vince entered the locker room in Montreal, where everyone else was charged with emotion. Triple H left the room, not wanting to witness what might happen. Eventually, Bret stood up and crossed the room. As they faced each other, Vince approached with his hands down, and Bret struck him hard in the temple. It was a tough moment. I felt sympathy for both Bret and Vince. Vince didn't want it to come to this, but he believed he had to make the best decision for the business, which is always his priority. This incident became known as the Montreal Screwjob actions. The fallout from this real-life drama with Bret led to the creation of the Mr. McMahon character, one of the most despised yet beloved figures in wrestling history. Out of chaos often emerges brilliance. Fans are booing McMahon out of the arena. It's quite the scene. Indeed, the Montreal Screwjob served as a catalyst for WWE to double down on its content. While the incident itself was deeply controversial, it left an indelible mark on the landscape of wrestling. As a result of these events, Vince garnered significant heat from the audience. Vince decided to capitalize on this heat by turning himself into a character. Vince always aspired to be a performer, but his father discouraged him from entering the business. Yet Vince was determined. This was his true calling.
You just show a little respect.
When it happened, stepping into this role felt instinctive for him. This marked the creation of the Mr. McMahon character, the villainous boss, which ultimately shifted the landscape of wrestling. On paper, WCW appeared stronger than WWE at that time. Bischoff aimed for dominance and wouldn't mind if WWE went under in the process. He wouldn't lose any sleep over it. This led to some questionable booking decisions by Eric Bischoff, like taking out NWO storylines far beyond their expiration date. Right. For years, WWE found itself catering primarily to a younger audience, while WCW was successfully engaging the 18 to 34 demographic with cutting-edge content. During the infamous 83 weeks where WWE struggled against WCW in the ratings, it took a toll on their confidence and mindset. This situation highlighted the urgent need for change. They realized that without evolution, they risked falling further behind. This prompted serious introspection. The feedback from audiences was clear. It was time for a transformation. WWE recognized that it needed to adapt and take bold steps forward. The rivalry between the two wrestling promotions was nothing short of intense.
It'll be me and you, McMahon, in the ring.
Vince McMahon took to the airwaves to discuss a fresh approach to WWE programming.
We in the WWF think that you, the audience, are quite frankly tired of having your intelligence insulted.
Vince hinted at exciting changes on the horizon. Eric Bischoff speculated that Vince would stick to his usual formula, likely introducing another outlandish character like Dwayne the Clown or an evil dentist. What Eric didn't realize was that Vince was preparing to usher in the Attitude Era. All right, was there a specific moment that marked the beginning of the Attitude Era? One evening, while Vince was absent from a television taping, Shawn Michaels made an entrance wearing bicycle shorts. Just before going out, he stuffed his shorts with a sock. The next day, Vince called him to express his disapproval, fining Shawn $10,000 for his unprofessionalism. Shawn responded, "That's fine, but go back and watch it. Wasn't that hilarious? If we're talking entertainment, it was definitely entertaining." This incident helped propel WWE into discussions about needing to adopt a bolder approach. I felt that while respect for the business was important, there was no need to pretend it wasn't a bit absurd. Ultimately, Shawn managed to avoid the fine. Vince was furious, but a few weeks later he acknowledged Shawn's actions, saying, "That's attitude. We need more of that." And thus, the Attitude Era was born. The Attitude Era represented a significant transformation in WWE's presentation style. The company adopted a grittier and more raw approach. Degeneration X emerged as a faction known for their rebellious stance against authority. This anti-establishment sentiment resonated with fans during that time, blurring the lines between fiction and reality.
This is going entirely too far. Next thing.
Despite warnings from Vince about potential repercussions, USA Network threatening to pull their show, backstage energy was electric. Then came a pivotal shift. What once seemed risky became a successful formula. WWE finally adjusted its writing style to target an older demographic, moving away from content aimed at 12-year-olds and focusing on the coveted 18 to 34 male audience. The standout star of the Attitude Era was undoubtedly Stone Cold Steve Austin.
With Steve Austin, bottom line is, I'm going to kick your ass. Straight and simple.
He brought a tough, foul-mouthed, blue-collar persona that audiences had never seen before. When Steve Austin arrived in WWE, he transformed into this brash, trash-talking character from South Texas, which quickly became a fan favorite. Surprisingly, as his persona developed, some fans began to turn against him. Yet his popularity soared. At that time, it was widely known that Triple H was slated to win the King of the Ring pay-per-view. However, due to an incident at Madison Square Garden, Triple H faced punishment, and Vince McMahon informed Stone Cold that he would take the crown in just 2 weeks. During a match leading up to this event, Steve suffered an injury that required him to rush to the hospital for 14 stitches. Once he returned from the ambulance, Michael Hayes approached him with news. "Hey, you've got Jake the Snake Roberts in the finals, and he just delivered a religious promo about you." This triggered an idea in Steve's mind. He recalled seeing John 3:16 signs at football games. Inspired by this, he prepared for his match against Jake. When he stepped into the ring, Steve wasted no time running down Jake.
You sit there and you thump your Bible and you say your prayers, and it didn't get you anywhere. Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says, "I just whipped your ass."
In that moment, I thought, oh my God, did he really just say that? I wondered how it would be received, especially in the Bible Belt. But Steve kept going, and you could hear Vince McMahon's commentary in the background. Nowhere, Steve added a perfect closing line, and that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
I said, and that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
This was a game changer. It completely redefined his character and how fans viewed him. The very next night, Austin 3:16 signs were everywhere. It was absolute madness. As the Monday Night War began, WWE struggled with ratings initially. They understood why. They were up against a hot show packed with fresh talent and exciting storylines. However, as WWE began to gain momentum, they felt confident that they had a superior product. The seeds of success had been planted, and it was just a matter of time before they would bloom. I distinctly recall that moment when it became clear something needed to be done. There was a pressing need to draw attention to the product and create a significant impact for WrestleMania. And that's exactly what we set out to achieve.
Ladies and gentlemen, Iron Mike Tyson!
At that time, Mike Tyson was not only one of the most famous celebrities in the world, but also widely regarded as the baddest man on the planet. Meanwhile, WCW was surely feeling the sting of this announcement. Tyson brought a massive audience from the boxing realm and mainstream media, capturing attention from all over the globe. The prospect of seeing Mike Tyson face off against Stone Cold Steve Austin was particularly intriguing. That moment marked the first time Eric Bischoff realized they were truly in for a fierce competition. Vince had seen the numbers and recognized that Raw's viewership had declined significantly. So what did Vince do? He secured the biggest name in pay-per-view, Mike Tyson. At WrestleMania 14, Shawn Michaels was dealing with a severe back injury, which made that match rather forgettable. Nothing to brag home about. Afterward, Vince turned to Steve and reassured him, "Don't worry about it. From this point forward, it all begins." This marked the start of a fierce rivalry between Stone Cold Steve Austin and his opponents, fundamentally altering the landscape of professional wrestling. This entire saga blurred the lines between reality and fiction. On one side, there was the eccentric billionaire boss, Vince McMahon. On the other, the rebellious Stone Cold Steve Austin, an ideal pairing. It was a classic narrative of an employer trying to suppress his employee while that employee fought against the system. In any other era, my character would have been labeled a heel.
Nobody, especially Vince McMahon, tells Stone Cold Steve Austin what to do, and that's the bottom line.
The combination of the real-life tension and the fact that I was up against the boss made me the ultimate anti-hero. Stone Cold was the one who introduced ambiguity into professional wrestling, which had traditionally been a black and white world of heroes and villains. In previous times, there was always a clear distinction between good guys and bad guys. Vince Jr. took that concept and flipped it upside down.
I will fire your ass!
In any other era, Stone Cold character would have been labeled a heel due to his trash-talking and antics.
You stupid bastards, you ain't got the balls to fire Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Austin was the one who introduced ambiguity into professional wrestling, which had traditionally been a black and white world of heroes and villains. In previous times, there was always a clear distinction between good guys and bad guys. Vince Jr. took that concept and flipped it upside down. This transformation was a game changer for the wrestling industry. In wrestling during that era, the concept of traditional heroes had largely vanished. Society had adopted a tougher demeanor, and this shift influenced the creation of characters that existed in a morally ambiguous space. Fans were no longer interested in straightforward good guys. Even in films, audiences gravitated towards more complex characters. This trend extended to video games and wrestling, where we needed to respond to the prevailing culture. Recognizing this, Vince McMahon seized the opportunity to capitalize on these shifts. There's an undeniable thrill in watching villains succeed. Perhaps it taps into our own frustrations with societal norms. People often wish they could act out against authority figures, like punching their boss in the face. Steve Austin embodied this sentiment, allowing fans to live vicariously through his rebellious antics. His persona was larger than life, making him simultaneously easy to love and to despise. Then there's Vince McMahon himself. As the figure at the top, he naturally attracted animosity from those below him. With his collection of luxury cars and tailored suits, he became a target for disdain, an archetype of the rich and powerful that many found easy to dislike. The character of Mr. McMahon was essentially a reflection of Vince's own experiences growing up in poverty, where he developed a distaste for wealthy individuals who looked down on him. Vince once remarked, "In those days, if you could fight, you were respected."
I was good at fighting, but they would say, "You didn't fight fair. You cheated." Yeah, I won.
This perspective shaped his character. Mr. McMahon became someone who could intimidate others, reflecting Vince's childhood views on wealth and power. "It's not my fault that I happen to be a self-made billionaire," he might say.
It's not my fault that I happen to be a self-made billionaire.
Vince understood how to manipulate audiences like few others, creating emotional responses that translated into ticket sales. In a Netflix interview, when asked about the similarities between himself and Mr. McMahon, Vince stated, "None whatsoever." He acknowledged that while Mr. McMahon is an exaggerated version of himself, the two are not vastly different. The character is an extension of Vince's own personality, albeit amplified for entertainment purposes. Throughout the years, many have misinterpreted who Vince is versus who he portrays on screen. He recognized that public perception matters more than personal intention. "Your perception is reality," he noted, accepting that he cannot control how others view him.
It's the way you are being perceived. Your perception is reality. You can't change the way people think about you.
That signature moment, showcasing his mastery and evoking strong emotions from the audience, emotions that ultimately sell tickets. The rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin, especially his intense rivalry with Mr. McMahon, was a crucial factor in WWE's resurgence and played a significant role in ending WCW's 83-week reign at the top of the ratings. This explosive rivalry not only transformed the wrestling industry, but also became a major cultural sensation. Eric Bischoff made a significant miscalculation by believing that simply holding onto his lead would be enough. In the world of wrestling, every superstar has a finite lifespan, making it vital to continuously develop new talent. Vince McMahon understood this need and was proactive in nurturing fresh stars, which fueled the fierce competition highlighted by Austin's character. Austin's ascent was remarkable, and soon after, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson emerged to further elevate WWE's status.
What The Rock is cooking.
A candid moment from a Netflix documentary about Vince. The Rock recounted a conversation where Vince shared his ambition to make him the WWE champion. The Rock recognized the historic significance of being the first champion of color, but Vince's priority was clear: profitability. "I don't care what color you are," Vince reportedly told The Rock. "I care about how much money you're going to make me and how much money you're going to make yourself."
Vince, and I know this for sure, he was always about, "I don't care what color you are. You could be black and green and purple, and you could be a unicorn for all I give a shit. As long as you are drawing money, you will be champion."
He stated, underscoring that as long as someone could generate revenue, their background was inconsequential. For Vince, it was always about the business. He saw only green, money. The Attitude Era evolved into a cultural phenomenon that infiltrated everyday life. Catchphrases like Austin 316 and Suck It from Dyke EX became part of popular culture, and merchandise was omnipresent. While today's financial figures may surpass those of the past, the sheer popularity of that era marked its zenith, a genuine entertainment phenomenon of the 90s. Vince McMahon has consistently demonstrated one unwavering dedication throughout his career to the wrestling industry he built from the ground up. This commitment transcends mere employment. It is his passion and his craft. In his perspective, if that devotion comes at the cost of family relationships, be it with Stephanie, Shane, or even his father, those feelings are secondary. By the year 2000, WWE had solidified its position as the dominant force over WCW, which was experiencing a slow and painful decline. Internal strife within WCW, worsened by the AOL Time Warner merger, resulted in a lack of clear vision and direction. Eric Bischoff found himself sitting in meetings with executives who had little knowledge of wrestling, dictating how to produce content for a product they neither understood nor valued. Wrestling was often dismissed as lowbrow entertainment, despite its massive following, and these executives were not invested in WCW's future. Without the leadership of a knowledgeable CEO, WCW's product deteriorated, and the momentum it had enjoyed during the Monday Night Wars steadily dissipated. When WCW's financial struggles became insurmountable, the narrative shifted dramatically. Suddenly, selling the company was paramount. Vince received a call from Turner expressing interest in selling WCW, and within days, the entire professional wrestling landscape changed. Vince acquired WCW for $2.5 million, a sum he likely recouped many times over. It was akin to purchasing Manhattan for just $24. I had the privilege of being on the charter plane, celebrating that monumental night after Vince secured WCW. It remains an unforgettable chapter in wrestling history. The plane ride was an amazing night, yet the following day, it was business as usual. The acquisition was handled quietly at a corporate level, but WWE chose to announce the purchase of WCW to fans in a dramatic live broadcast.
Imagine that. Here I am on WCW television. How can that happen? Well, there's only one way. You see, it was just a matter of time before I, Vince McMahon, bought my competition. That's right. I own WCW.
This revelation occurred during the live simulcast of WCW's final Nitro in Panama City while WWE was broadcasting from Cleveland. It was a monumental moment, showcasing the end of an era.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vincent K.
The audience was left in disbelief, amazed that WWE managed to execute such a surprise without any leaks beforehand. Eric Bischoff later admitted in an interview that he felt a temptation to tune in, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Watching would mean accepting that he had truly lost. He just couldn't face it.
You have to grab your competition by the throat, and you've got to squeeze the life out of your competition. Just like I did to WCW.
Vince also shared in a meeting with Netflix that he didn't derive immense joy from winning. He had expected to come out on top. The victory was exhilarating because they had pushed him to his limits, but there was a bittersweet edge to it. Vince thrives under pressure and healthy competition, which brings out his best. Without that challenge, something feels lacking. Now it's a new endeavor, like starting an entirely new football league. The Rock reminisces about a significant conversation he had with Vince McMahon in one of the arenas. Vince pulled him aside and shared an exciting idea, bringing Hulk Hogan back for a WrestleMania main event. The Rock's immediate reaction was enthusiasm. "I absolutely love it. Icon versus icon." After spending nearly a decade with WCW, where Hogan was often positioned as a rival to WWE, the two legends didn't dwell on their complicated history. They understood the potential significance of a match like this, one that would undoubtedly be etched into wrestling history. Vince's approach was clear. Regardless of past grievances, the focus should always be on delivering what the audience craved, entertainment. This meant setting aside personal pride and embracing the opportunity to create something memorable. Reflecting on that WrestleMania moment, The Rock felt a wave of nostalgia. He recalled the electrifying atmosphere, feeling goosebumps as he remembered the crowd's energy. There was an iconic moment when both men absorbed the audience's reaction, instinctively looking at each other. That unscripted interaction became one of the most memorable highlights of the night. Initially, Hogan was meant to play the heel while The Rock took on the hero role. However, as soon as The Rock started throwing punches, the crowd's response was unexpected. They booed him and rallied behind Hogan. The script had to adapt in real time. Although The Rock ultimately won the match, it was Hogan who emerged as the true crowd favorite that night. When asked if Vince ever fully trusted him after his WCW tenure, Hogan expressed that he felt a greater level of trust now than ever before. He recognized that Vince valued Hogan's ability to draw large crowds. Every decision Vince made was focused on what would benefit the business, even if it meant bringing back individuals he had previously let go or who had criticized him. Hogan noted that Vince's personal feelings rarely interfered with his business decisions.
Allow me to introduce you to the new general manager of Raw, Eric Bischoff.
Ultimately, Vince's decision-making process was driven by one goal: success for the company. This mindset has been a cornerstone of his success, and he has consistently put business first throughout his career.
Well, there's one thing I've learned from the Montreal Screwjob. There's nothing sweeter than a good double cross.
I'm in business. And business comes first.
Said, emphasizing that Vince always prioritized business above all else. In WWE, talent is constantly evolving. Stars like The Rock and Austin were at the forefront, but left by 2004, creating a need for new talent. Vince famously addressed the Raw roster during this transitional period, seeking someone with ruthless aggression. At that time, John Cena was a fresh face, but wasn't present for that speech. Just days later, during a taping where The Undertaker couldn't perform, Cena was called upon.
What is the one quality that you possess that makes you think that you can walk out here and come into the ring and face the very best in the business.
John Cena's iconic moment during his rise to fame came when he boldly declared, "Why am I going to beat you? Because of ruthless aggression." This phrase became synonymous with what fans later recognized as the Ruthless Aggression era, a time when Cena was still finding his footing in WWE. Initially, his character lacked depth, and he struggled to connect with the audience, even facing the possibility of being let go due to his uninspired persona.
Frustration by John Cena.
However, everything changed when Cena decided to embrace a more playful side. While on a tour bus, he overheard some fellow wrestlers rapping and felt compelled to join in. For about 5 minutes, he showcased his lyrical skills, impressively roasting everyone around him without realizing that Stephanie McMahon was on board. She caught wind of his talent and asked if he would be interested in bringing that energy to television. Cena enthusiastically agreed. This marked a turning point in his career. Instead of being a candidate for release, Cena transformed into something unique and entertaining. He adopted the persona of the Doctor of Thugonomics, bringing a fresh style to the ring that resonated with fans. His bold approach and charisma propelled him into superstardom almost overnight. When discussing Vince McMahon, it's clear that separating the character from the man can be challenging. For Stephanie, there's a distinction between calling him Vince in a business context and referring to him as Dad at home. While her father may have a softer side, Vince as a boss is known for being demanding and expecting nothing less than results, especially from his own family. Vince McMahon was keen to avoid any perceptions of total nepotism, understanding that it wouldn't reflect well on him or on Shane and Stephanie. To instill a strong work ethic, he made them start from the ground up, working various roles within the company before assuming prominent positions. When they pitched ideas, Vince was known for his tough love. He would often outright reject their proposals, insisting they weren't good enough. His expectation was that they would rise above and prove themselves worthy of the McMahon name. He held them to a higher standard than anyone else in the business, wanting them to excel. While I found Vince to be more lenient with me than with Shane, it's clear that Shane challenged him in ways Stephanie did not. There's a unique dynamic in father-son relationships, especially in a family business. Many people share stories about family businesses, but I've rarely come across one where everything went smoothly from start to finish. Often, things can get complicated after a parent passes away. Over the years, I struggled to understand Shane's role within the family dynamics. At times, he seemed favored, while at others, he appeared completely sidelined. It always felt like he was somewhat of an outsider within the McMahon family. Shane aspired to be the next McMahon leader and believed it was his destiny. At one point, he even hoped his father would purchase a company for him to manage, allowing him to prove himself before taking over WWE.
This is about family business. This is about us, Dad. This is about you and me.
Oh, no. This is not family business anymore. This is my business.
A defining moment between Vince and Shane occurred during a heated creative disagreement. Shane passionately advocated for an idea that Vince vehemently opposed. As tensions escalated, Vince turned to Shane and said, "Not while I'm alive." While eating, he handed Shane a knife and said, "If you want this so badly, you need to stick this right here." It was a metaphorical challenge. If Shane wasn't willing to take decisive action, Vince would question his commitment. He also reminded Shane that if he wanted to take over, he might have to remove Vince from the equation, just as Vince had done with his own father when their visions clashed. Right? Donald Trump was among the many celebrities who enjoyed participating in wrestling events.
Hair versus hair match.
Money. Here comes the money, man. Look at that man right there, Donald Trump.
Vince approached him with an intriguing idea. What if each of them had a wrestler represent them at WrestleMania? If Trump's wrestler lost, Vince would shave his head. Conversely, if Vince lost, he would face the same fate. The feud between Trump and Vince during the Battle of the Billionaires became one of the most watched pay-per-view events in wrestling history. It was a massive draw, and I found Trump entertaining during his appearances on the show. His ability to connect with wrestling fans was impressive. In many ways, Trump's persona aligns more closely with that of a wrestler than that of a traditional politician. Wrestling has left its mark on numerous aspects of society, including politics. Why wouldn't it? All right. Can you believe they elected a president who once played a character on a wrestling show? Vince McMahon is undoubtedly one of the most iconic figures in WWE history. However, after the Attitude Era, his character was used more sparingly. The shift from a TV-14 rating to TV PG was largely influenced by Vince's broader perspective as a businessman. He recognized that the edgy storylines and risque content wouldn't appeal to advertisers. Here's the reality: Vince is the chairman and wants to maximize profits. He aimed to attract a larger audience, including families and children. This strategic pivot has proven beneficial, both financially and in terms of brand reputation. Eventually, stock prices soared and sponsorship deals became significantly more profitable. Yet many fans from the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression period felt alienated, likening the new direction to something akin to The Muppet Show. In fact, WWE did have the Muppets guest host at one point. The elements that once made WWE a guilty pleasure for many were being stripped away, leaving some fans dissatisfied. "I make decisions that I believe are best for all of you from a business standpoint," Vince stated in a direct response to fans' complaints.
I'm oriented, and you don't even understand what I'm doing. But in time, you will.
When the decision to adopt a PG rating was announced, it sparked complaints from certain fans online. But times change, perspectives evolve, and adaptation is key. As a result, WWE chose to dial back its content. Stephanie McMahon had long been a prominent figure on television, but behind the scenes, she took on the role of Chief Brand Officer, becoming a public face for the company. Meanwhile, Paul Levesque, known as Triple H, was gaining more influence in creative decisions, effectively serving as Vince's right-hand man. Shane McMahon was largely absent from WWE for about 6 or 7 years. He had stepped away from the spotlight both on and off camera. Then one day he received a call from his father, Vince. Vince had an intriguing idea to discuss. At that point in the storyline, Vince was preparing to bestow a prestigious accolade upon his daughter, who, in the narrative, didn't quite deserve it.
No one in the world deserves this award as much as you.
Suddenly, the familiar music hit, and the crowd erupted with excitement. Even now, I can feel the goosebumps just thinking about that moment. You and your husband, Triple H, have been running this company into the ground. "I want control of Monday Night Raw," Shane declared, setting off a series of events that led to a monumental match being arranged by Vince.
"One match, one night, an opponent of my choosing. I'll tell you where and when and who."
Vince set up a match for Shane at WrestleMania, choosing none other than The Undertaker, known as one of the most formidable opponents in wrestling history.
"And your opponent, The Undertaker."
Fast forward to WrestleMania 32, and you can hear the crowd chanting, "Money, here we go." It must have been surreal for Shane to be in that position. Throughout his career, it seemed like he was constantly striving to prove himself to his father, often taking incredible risks in the ring. Shane sought his father's respect, though it didn't seem like he received much affirmation along the way. In a Netflix interview, Vince expressed pride in Shane for all his efforts and dedication. He acknowledged that Shane always gives his all, particularly during that match at WrestleMania. When asked if he remembered seeing his dad after the match, Shane reflected on how emotional it was. "Yeah, I got a hug that night," he said. It was a significant moment for him. He felt the weight of that embrace. When questioned about how hard it was to earn that kind of acknowledgement from Vince, Shane simply stated it was rare and something he had to work for. In that instance, it seemed he had indeed earned it. It's common to hear wrestlers speak about Vince as if he's a father figure to them. His legacy is not just about his business acumen, but also about the relationships he has fostered within the wrestling industry. Vince has inspired, mentored, and often acting as a guiding force in their careers. There's no denying that Vince serves as the patriarch of WWE. Many wrestlers, including his own children, are eager for his approval. When Shane returned, he primarily competed as an in-ring talent, but appeared to be trying to regain his father's favor and potentially position himself as Vince's successor in WWE. He always believed he would take on that role. However, things didn't unfold as he expected. Many speculate that Stephanie's abilities outshone his when it came to leadership within the company. Despite Shane's efforts, he failed to gain his father's full trust, especially when it came to the direction of WWE. Stephanie McMahon embodies a strong leadership style reminiscent of her father Vince. She commands respect and authority, making it clear that she cannot be easily manipulated. In contrast, Shane McMahon is known for his kindness. However, in the wrestling industry, a nice boss can often be seen as vulnerable, leading others to take advantage of that niceness. With Stephanie, there's an immediate understanding that she is not someone to be underestimated. Throughout the 2010s and into the early 2020s, Vince, Stephanie, and Triple H emerged as the primary figures steering WWE. This era saw remarkable achievements, including the launch of the WWE Network, which was groundbreaking at the time. The company also excelled in leveraging social media and secured increasingly lucrative television rights deals, culminating in a significant partnership with Peacock. During this period, Linda McMahon took on a role in Donald Trump's administration, leading the Small Business Administration. Additionally, competition intensified with the debut of AEW Wrestling in 2019, featuring notable figures like Cody Rhodes, who would eventually return to WWE 3 years later. WWE's stock continued to rise steadily during this time. While the company may not have had the same energy as it did in the 1980s or during the Attitude Era, Vince consistently found ways to cultivate new stars who became prominent faces of the brand. Roman Reigns, for instance, emerged as a mainstream superstar. Given the success of WWE during this time, it was difficult to envision Vince stepping down. However, it seemed clear that Stephanie McMahon and Triple H were positioned to take over leadership if that ever occurred. While there were discussions around succession plans, it was widely believed that Triple H was the likely successor. Yet, Vince himself never envisioned retirement. The idea of Vince McMahon not being at the helm of WWE seemed unfathomable. He was synonymous with the company. One could speculate that only a cataclysmic event would prompt his departure. Then came the shocking news that rocked the wrestling world. Vince McMahon announced he was stepping down as chairman and CEO. This event shook WWE to its core, leaving many fans and industry insiders wondering what could have possibly prompted such a sudden, unexpected decision. According to reports from the Wall Street Journal, McMahon allegedly paid $3 million to silence a former employee with whom he purportedly had an affair. The situation began with an anonymous tip sent to WWE's board regarding allegations that Vince had concealed this relationship and its implications. The report detailed how McMahon initially hired this woman at a $100,000 salary, which he later raised to $200,000 after their relationship began. The email sent to board members characterized the situation as one where McMahon had exploited his position of power over an employee. Questions arose about the true nature of consent in such a dynamic. Vince's influence loomed large over individuals' careers, creating an atmosphere where many felt hesitant to come forward due to fear of repercussions. Initially, it was expected that Vince would aggressively defend his reputation against media reports, yet he chose not to challenge them publicly, a surprising move for someone known for his assertiveness. He stated his commitment to fully cooperate with an investigation led by a special committee. "I will do everything in my power to assist this investigation," Vince declared. Vince stepped down as CEO but remained on the board and continued to oversee creative direction. When the initial news broke, it was announced that Vince would make an appearance on air.
Welcome to SmackDown!
Welcome to SmackDown. This was essentially his response to the unfolding story, and it resulted in one of their highest ratings of the year, with fans cheering wildly. 3 weeks prior, Vince McMahon had resigned as YCEO amid allegations of sexual misconduct. However, new details have emerged regarding the situation. According to the Wall Street Journal, Vince reportedly agreed to pay $12 million to 4 different women over a span of 16 years, with these agreements aimed at silencing allegations of misconduct. Some of these claims were particularly serious. The most significant involved a settlement of $7.5 million with a former wrestler who alleged that Vince had coerced her into performing oral sex and subsequently did not renew her contract after she rejected his advances. Vince was always seen as someone who would weather any storm, but just a week or two later, it was a shock when he announced his retirement on a Friday afternoon, timed no doubt to boost ratings for that night's show. Stephanie McMahon opened the broadcast with the news. She delivered a brief tribute, reflecting on his life's work. But it felt surreal. After 40 years of Vince running the company, everything changed overnight. The atmosphere in the locker room was filled with uncertainty and a sense of chaos as everyone wondered what WWE would look like without him. Initially, I thought Stephanie would take the lead as the face of the company, while Paul Levesque would manage the events, and that's pretty much how it unfolded. However, I believe fans would be more intrigued by the possibility of Vince's return. He can stir up drama quite like him, and that drama is what drives ticket sales. Do I envision Vince making a comeback? In the world of wrestling, I would say yes. Even after his retirement, Vince remained a shareholder of WWE and still wielded a degree of power and influence behind the scenes. Fans know that in wrestling, anything can happen. The unpredictability and suspension of disbelief that characterize the industry could pave the way for a dramatic return of Vince McMahon. Significant developments are unfolding at World Wrestling Entertainment, based in Stamford. Vince McMahon, the majority owner, has made his return as executive chairman. In the meantime, his daughter, Stephanie McMahon, has stepped down from her role as co-CEO. Many analysts on Wall Street anticipate that McMahon may be looking to sell the $6 billion company in the near future. When Vince made his comeback, I wasn't shocked. Rather, I was surprised by the reactions of others. For a couple of weeks prior, I had heard whispers that Vince was eager to return. I wasn't sure if he could pull it off since the board had previously voted unanimously against his return. However, he held the controlling votes and managed to change the board's composition. Shortly after, Stephanie announced her resignation. She shared her thoughts via Twitter, and Vince expressed that he believed he should never have stepped down, claiming he was persuaded to do so by someone close to him. It seems clear that Vince pushed his way back in, and Stephanie likely didn't want to be part of the company with him involved. Upon his return, discussions immediately turned to a potential sale of the company. It was clear they were ready to entertain offers. Now, it's official. Endeavor has announced that WWE and UFC will merge to create a $21 billion global entity focused on live sports and entertainment. This isn't about ushering in a new generation led by Vince McMahon. The organization has grown too large to remain a family-run business. The decisions will now be made by experts in the field rather than being influenced by family ties. The focus is on qualifications over legacy. In this competitive landscape, the reigning lion will not accept anything less. Currently, the company is thriving. Attendance levels are at their highest since 2002, and viewership for major events has reached unprecedented numbers. Sponsorship deals have surpassed all previous records, and profits and revenues are at an all-time high. Audiences are drawn to entertainment regardless of the personal controversies surrounding its leadership. Recently, WWE secured a groundbreaking $5 billion deal with Netflix for its flagship weekly show, Raw, spanning 10 years. Allegation law employee. By James Blacks. After Lesnar agreed to a new contract, McMahon allegedly told Grant that sexual favors were part of the arrangement. In response, a spokesperson for Vince McMahon has stated that the lawsuit is filled with falsehoods and fabricated incidents, describing it as a vindictive distortion of reality, and affirmed that he will defend himself vigorously. Although McMahon has denied the allegations, he announced his resignation out of respect for the WWE universe. The timing of his resignation, occurring just a day after the lawsuit was filed, indicates a significant shift in circumstances for him. He is now part of a different organization and no longer holds the same level of control. If he is asked to step down, he must comply. This raises an important question. What will Vince McMahon's legacy be? He is undoubtedly one of the greatest promoters in history, and that reputation is well deserved. Despite some aspects of his character that I find unappealing, his contributions cannot be overlooked. When considering Vince McMahon's impact on professional wrestling, it's clear there are both positive and negative elements. He is arguably the most pivotal figure in wrestling history. At his peak, he displayed remarkable creative genius, but he is far from perfect. This is a man driven by an insatiable desire for more success, more influence. As he famously put,
I've got an insatiable appetite for life, and I want more.
This relentless pursuit has transformed wrestling from a small operation into a multi-billion-dollar empire. For years, pro wrestling has presented life in black and white terms, heroes versus villains. But the real lesson from Vince McMahon's story is that life is rarely so straightforward. It's essential to recognize that one can appreciate what he built while also acknowledging his deeply problematic and potentially reprehensible behavior. While McMahon may wish to be remembered as the legendary creator of WWE, any positive legacy he leaves behind is now inseparable from the negative aspects of his actions. In his own words, "What's my legacy? I don't have one. Everyone has their own perception of who they think Vince McMahon is, but few truly know me. Many have confused my on-screen persona with my true self. When I look in the mirror, I know exactly who I am." Describing Vince McMahon is no easy task. He embodies a complex mix of traits: an egomaniac, a fitness enthusiast, and someone who thrives on daily challenges. His sexual energy and psychological intricacies make him a true enigma, a paradox wrapped in contradiction.
The only person in the world I need to thank is me, because I did it all. I did it all by myself.
The lines between reality and performance often become blurred, making it difficult to separate the man from the character. Performers sometimes start to lose their grip on their true identities as they immerse themselves in their characters, becoming them entirely.
My name is not Vince. My name is Mr. McMahon.
Vince himself grapples with the question of where the character ends and the real person begins. Perhaps it's a mixture of both, with one side being a more exaggerated version of the other, though it's hard to pinpoint which is which. In January 2024, Vince McMahon via Twitter declared that the investigation has been complete and he was found not guilty of the charges against him, and he is proven innocent. While this announcement may bring some closure to the case, many questions remain regarding the truth behind the allegations. Despite the outcome of the investigation, Vince McMahon's complicated legacy will continue to be a topic of debate among wrestling fans and industry insiders.